Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniel Pike, and I'm privileged to lead a truly fantastic team at RMI that focuses on carbon dioxide removal, including direct air capture. Our team drives RMI's CDR initiatives, which include innovation roadmaps, startup acceleration programs, first-of-a-kind projects, including regional DAC hubs, and efforts to shape markets and policy at the state, federal, and international levels. Yesterday, there were calls for first-of-a-kind projects and for radical collaboration. This conference is itself a first-of-a-kind project, and it's required some pretty radical collaboration. So thank you to our hosts, to the panelists, to the event staff, and to you, the audience, for making this event possible. Yesterday's panel on the geographic distribution of DAC really resonated with me. It's encouraging to all of us, of course, to see Kenya embrace direct air capture as a national opportunity. But for me, it also strikes a personal chord. I first went to Kenya as a student to work on a poverty alleviation project in Makueni County, which is a semi-arid region between Nairobi and the eastern coast. It was the first time that I saw the impacts of climate change on people and their livelihoods. My experience was very formative, and it was probably the one that shaped my career more than any other. Growing up in the UK and the US, I was assured that things would only get better. As the world globalized, it would get richer and safer. I wanted to be part of that, and I arrived in Kenya ready to participate in what I thought would be an unstoppable wave of economic growth and sustainable development. In Kenya, my worldview was fully challenged. The people I met didn't think that things were only getting better. They weren't celebrating economic growth and sustainable development. They were grappling with climate change. They wanted to know why the rivers they played in as children had dried up, where all the birds had gone, and why their soils were yielding less food. And they were trying to figure out what to do about it. The answer they arrived at was drylands agroforestry, reintegrating indigenous tree species into degraded lands. Their goals were to protect their soils, restore their ecosystems, and yes, remove carbon from the atmosphere. They succeeded in many ways. They planted millions of trees, many of those trees grew, soils improved, some of the birds came back, and they even removed some carbon from the air. In fact, they nearly paid for the whole project with some of the earliest carbon credits. But it took 20 years for those trees to grow. They were only able to plant enough to make a tiny dent, and things have not gotten better overall for them when it comes to climate change. I'm sure most of you can point to a particular experience that in retrospect was the catalyst for you deciding to build a career in climate. For me, it was my time in Kenya. In 2009, I quit my first full-time job to join a solar energy startup. Almost everyone around me said solar would never work, that it was too expensive, the world wasn't ready for it yet. My manager told me I was making a mistake and that I'd regret it, and he didn't invite me to come back if I did. I didn't have the hard evidence to prove my manager wrong on the technology or the economics of solar. But I felt certain that the naysayers in comfortable positions around me were kidding themselves about climate change and underestimating how much progress a new generation could make if we decided to work on clean energy and truly committed to it. So I ignored my manager and I jumped. And it was not easy. Our company had to fight for every single panel we installed. In our first 3 years, I saw the company take off and then end up firing half the people it had hired. Solyndra collapsed, governments pulled funding, people on our installation team injured themselves, roofs leaked, customers threatened to sue us, and almost everything that could go wrong did go wrong at some point. But I saw the founders' vision become a reality. They built a company. The company helped build an industry. That industry survived and then thrived. In the process, panel costs kept on falling, incremental gains were won, and the tide kept turning. Since then, I've been fortunate to see people build many other climate enterprises that have proved naysayers wrong. Wind power, clean energy, retail, electric vehicles, green banks, passing the IRA. Again and again, I've seen people commit, seen their efforts compound, and seen the tide turn. I expect this is a familiar tale to all of you. You've seen similar stuff. You probably made a lot of it happen. You know that progress is not inevitable, but it can be earned one day at a time, one decision at a time. I also bet that many of you are here because you also know that the progress we have made is not enough. During COVID, I met a group of searchers who had reached the conclusion that despite all the progress being made on clean energy and decarbonization, reducing emissions alone was not going to be enough. They wanted to use the COVID lockdown to move the ball forward on CDR. Specifically, they wanted to map out all of the possible pathways to removing carbon from the air, to discover the ideas that were hiding under rocks and on lab shelves, and make that knowledge open access for the world to use. That idea became a startup nonprofit called the Climate Map. Like the startup solar company, the Climate Map struggled, survived, and then eventually thrived, thanks to the efforts of many committed people and the willingness of experts in the CDR field, in particular researchers at Heriot-Watt University, some of whom are here today, to take a risk and collaborate with us in radical new ways. The Climate Map went on to become RMI's CDR initiative, and that initiative has now grown to work across all of the interventions that I mentioned earlier. So after all that, I found myself yesterday in this room listening to inspiring leaders in Kenya say that they see hope for their country in direct air capture. They want to make it a national priority, and they want people in this room to work with them for all of our sakes. For me personally, it was a very full circle moment. But more importantly, it also felt like the beginning of the next big journey for all of us in this room. If you're in this room, I think you might share the same belief that I had back when I left my first job, that many people in comfortable positions are still kidding themselves about climate change, and also underestimating the progress that can be made if we pick a new path and commit to it. That is the right belief. But is direct air capture the right path? Can we succeed with direct air capture? I think we can, but we have to make smart choices as a community this decade. As Professor Lackner argued, we're in the same position today as a PV engineer was in the 70s, but we don't have as much time as they had. We need to be smart about which technologies we try to scale and how we scale them. We need to hit learning rates of 20%, not 10. As Ben Rubin pointed out, only 13% of renewable energy projects with local opposition were completed. CDR needs to be a genuine boon to host communities, else CDR won't scale in time. And as Professor Eisenbarger argued, if we are to succeed, we need to become much better organized and make clearer asks to the wider world, especially to governments. The second day of this conference is designed to help us move towards making smart choices as a community this decade. We're going to have 4 panel discussions. Each is dedicated to an area where we must get the choices right. We're going to cover R&D, climate justice and social license, getting projects built, and then public policy. To our panelists, I urge you to take a stand on which choices you see as smart and which as misguided. And I urge everyone in this room to take a stand on those choices also. Seek ways to listen and lead in this vital collective effort. Ultimately, direct air capture won't be limited by how much energy we have. Energy, in its fullest sense, is abundant on this planet. Direct air capture will be limited only by our ability to make smart collective choices and to commit. Thank you.